We have Dr. Palanivel Thiaga with us. He's, of course, the Finance Minister of the Government of Tamil Nadu. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Thiaga, for joining us. I don't know if you had a chance to catch a little bit of what the Vice Chair of the Niti Aayog was saying, where he basically seems to suggest that, contrary to the devil in the detail, this is a growth-oriented budget. The fundamentals of the economy are already strong, as the economic survey says, and this is simply building on that. Are you convinced?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation. I did catch a bit of my friend Mr. Rajan Kumar's comments, and I have no reason to doubt that his intent and the vision is what he says it is. But I am, in general, a person who worries a lot about outcomes relative to intent. As you know, I wrote recently, a couple of months ago, that the whole budgeting process seems to get too much attention on the prospective, because people think it'll change their lives, and not enough attention on the revised estimate or even the final account of 2 years ago, which is really where we'll see what the impact was. And so, this is much in keeping with the other budgets of this government. It has some good things. It has some, really out of the kind of realm announcements that I think will be almost impossible to implement. And at the end of the day, when we look back a year from now, 2 years from now,
so
we'll know. But
let's break it up then. Let's break it up one by one. Let's first tell me,
sure,
what do you think in this budget you think is unrealistic or is disappointing?
Well, unrealistic, let me give you one example, and then disappointing, I'll give you a couple of examples. Unrealistic, I think this notion of one nation, one registration is extremely unrealistic, right? I mean, anybody who has any idea of how the land management and revenue administration works in any state, we struggle. The fundamental, profound problem is that the British didn't come here to set a long-term government. They came here to extract wealth and go. So the whole design of revenue and land management and all that is based on making sure they collected taxes appropriately, and we have multiple records of who owns what and so forth. And as you know, right from the days of Adam Smith, one of the building blocks of good economic activity is inalienable and clear property rights and defendable property rights.
Okay.
And so that is already a struggle in the state. For example, right after we came to power, we have passed a new bill, though it's yet to get the consent of the president. I don't know why it's 6 months in Delhi.
Right.
But saying that so much bad things happen in the registration department that we want to give the IG registration the power to cancel fraudulent transference and to criminally prosecute every single time there's a cancellation.
Okay,
so it doesn't allow for bad things.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying that's a bit unrealistic.
Yeah.
But in terms of what you saw as a positive, for example, the finance minister said that there's going to be 1 lakh crore additionally which the states can borrow from. We are still awaiting details of how that's going to work. But as somebody who's been very vocal about the centre's sort of unequal sharing of finances and resources, is that you welcome that, the 1 lakh crore?
Actually, you've asked me a fairly complex question. So let me actually maybe go a slight divergence to tell you the positive things I see in the budget first, and then I'll come to 1 lakh crore, which I don't think is that positive. I think it's a sleight of hand in accounting. So the positive things I see in the budget, just so people don't label me a kind of, permanent critic. I'm very happy first that the Union Minister spoke in English. From people like me who could understand it clearly to the global markets where India is an important component now. I'm glad that all investors in the world get to hear it from her directly.
Okay.
There was a lot of restraint shown despite impending state elections. There was not profligacy or really out of whack, descent into populism. The union government generally takes a holistic approach to things. They're masters at marketing and hype. So they need something to leverage. So they do that well. And that's not a bad thing in many ways, to have holistic approaches to different sectors. There was some focus on leading edge technologies, on startup, on battery change for EVs, on, the green bonds to create environmentally, and green jobs related to the green industry, to the ecologically friendly industry.
Okay.
And two last things I would say. One, improvement of the banking services through banking at post offices, which is a long time coming, and then the digital banks at the remote districts where they don't have enough banks. And finally, I would say, as we had asked on December 30th when we were in Delhi for the finance ministers of states meeting with the union, the continuation of support and grants and schemes to the MSME sector was still suffering because we've had 2 years in a row. So all these I say is positive.
These are positive. Okay, now the 1 lakh crore. Yes. Now the
1 lakh crore to me is pure accounting. It is brilliant accounting, but it's pure accounting. I'll tell you why. If you look at what they have really done, they have cut down the revenue spending in the grants and schemes. If you look at many of those departments, you'll see they're either flat or slightly down or very marginally up. So what they used to send us in things like Smart City, or what they used to send us in kind of other joint sponsored schemes in building or other things, they have just shifted that from grants and schemes to loans. Now, I'm not even complaining in the fact that, grant is outright grant and a loan is repayable, because interest-free repayable over 50 years is the equivalent to a grant, because of the inflation and the cost of money and time value of money and all that. It just becomes effectively like a grant. Or at least, it's like 75% of it grant, only 25% is repaid.
Okay.
But what they have done is brilliant, because what they've done is taken a bunch of revenue spending out, therefore made the revenue deficit look lower and more fiscally responsible, shifted into capex, therefore make the capex number look high, therefore show the year-over-year growth in capex as a major stimulus to the economy.
I see.
All while basically not really changing anything. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
If you look at the last 3 years capex numbers, every year has been a sleight of hand accounting. Let's take 2021, where there was this big announcement about 10% of GDP being the stimulus.
Yes.
And at that point, most banks, most analysts said this is no way. It's amounting more like 1% of GDP, not 10%.
Yes.
So when the revised estimate came to be printed, they had to show something to show they had done a lot. So what did they do? They took all the off-balance sheet debt that they had accrued in Food Corporation of India and other PSUs, and they brought it back on balance sheet, 1.5 lakh crores. And they said, therefore the capex went up, therefore the fiscal deficit went up.
Okay.
That was 2021.
Oh, interesting.
21-22, the revised estimate to the to the budget estimate, they showed another 75,000 crores, I don't know the exact number, of capex. And they say, look, we have spent our way. But if you look at the detail, the bulk of that is settling the liabilities of Air India to the bank so that they could do the transfer to the Tatas. Right? So this kind of capex is not the kind of capex that really creates jobs, that really creates infrastructure, that provides the multiplier effect for growth and all that. This is accounting capex.
Okay, interesting. Right? It's okay. Point made. It's a bit technical for our viewers, but I get your broad point. In terms of basically, you're saying they've disguised this 1 lakh crore as a kind of accounting sleight of hand. In fact, Subhash Garg, former finance secretary, actually tweeted this, saying the increase seems only on two accounts: 1 lakh crore of loans to states and green bonds, borrowing for public sector. No real increase in government capex. So I think there's been some picking up of this. But anyway, fascinating as always to hear from you, Dr. Thiaga Rajan. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.